Hey, welcome back to another episode of Compliance Clips with your co-hosts, Rick Morgan and John Farquhar. And today we have a very special guest, the illustrious and wonderful and actually good looking now that he's wearing a J shirt,
Oh,
Phil
had to.
Fletcher with the TTSAO. And if I'm not mistaken, Phil, I believe you are the president of the TTSO organization.
Once again, John, you are never mistaken. I am.
Cool. So, Phil, can you give us a quick background of you and the TTSAO for our listeners, in case those that don't know what TTSAO stands for?
Well, TTSAO was constructed almost 35 years ago now,
Wow.
and we had a number of the leading school operators in the province at that time.
Wow.
And right now we're at 55 different campuses throughout
Wow.
the province.
Nice.
And we are the oldest group because we strive to have the best outcomes for our students and to maintain uh, compliance and competency throughout the courses so that we can turn out the best end product. And that's part of really what we want to do. And I was running a school in Mississauga about 10 years ago, and I was asked to come on the board at that time to be the treasurer. And so from that point on, I was the treasurer for a number of years, then vice chair. And then when the previous president was retiring from that post, they decided to allow me to take over and
Cool.
to be in charge of the organization here to continue what we're trying to do for providing the best drivers for the industry out there and overall for road safety.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. Well, I know I can tell from, or I can say this from the insurance side of the business that I've been in now 20 plus years, is that TTSAO is a nice high benchmark that when it comes to good quality schools, those that are in the TTSAO program are recognized by the insurance industry. And you have a program that is recognized by the schools in the TTSAO group as being much more than what we call the MELT program. So it's a much higher number of hours and criteria that needs to be.
That's right. Our standard course, which we consider the gold standard, is almost twice what the MELT training requirement is. We go to 200 hours instead of the 103.5.
Sure. Cool, cool, awesome. So we're going to have a chat today about some interesting topics relating to new drivers, existing drivers, legalities around it, enforcement, compliance, and all that good stuff when it comes to drivers with a Class A license. So I'm going to pass it over to my co-host, Mr. Morgan, because he's just chomping at the bit today to share and bite into some of these juicy bits that he wants to talk about. So I am going to try to be quiet. We've already got a bet that that's not going to happen, but we're going to try and see what happens. So, Mr. Morgan, over to you, sir.
Well, thank you, John. And Philip, thanks for joining us today. Let's get right into it. So, driving schools, they have been front and center of the headlines lately. We've had a whole bunch of really interesting news articles and explorations of what's going on in what I'm starting to refer to as the sordid underbelly of trucking these days. So, we've got truck training companies, excuse me, that have been identified as, for lack of a better word, cheating the system, putting out drivers who aren't qualified. What can you tell us about some of these schools? Because for those who may not be as familiar as John and yourself in the structure, TTSAO is a small portion and a best practices part of truck driving schools. You mentioned the difference between MELT and TTSAO syllabus. What's the difference, and why do we find ourselves where we are right now with, well, they say 300 to 400 drivers who are unlicensed, but I can't imagine that's the limit of this particular situation.
And that is probably a growing number based on things that I'm hearing throughout the industry and what's happening behind the scenes. And I think we're going to find that more of that will happen. I know of a case where I was asked to talk to a school about them joining TTSAO years ago when I was treasurer, and so I arranged to meet the school. And the operator of the school would not allow me to go on their campus or see anything. He wanted to meet me in a parking lot up by the airport. And that school eventually, well, of course, we did not accept them or even take a serious interest about an application. And that school eventually lost their accreditation. And those drivers that had gone through there are some of those 300, 400 drivers that have to retest to keep their license.
You
So
didn't go
there's
get the manila envelope in the parking lot after dark with a.
no, but somebody else might have done that. There's a problem there.
Yeah.
So we see that there are schools that operate in a non-compliant manner. I had an instructor that I hired came from another school because he told me of what was going on behind the scenes there, and it was not to his liking at all. That he felt they were cheating, having the students sign everything before they even took their training. So they signed off on each portion of their theory, yard, and over the road training before even getting in the truck or doing anything. And he left that school, and that school subsequently was closed by the ministry. And they had 24 to 27 trucks out on the road. So just imagine the number of people that were going through there at that time. So
Yeah.
there have been some pretty huge things going on here with the lack of oversight and the lack of internal compliance by a number of the schools. And as I mentioned, we had like 55 campuses. There are now about 265 campuses in Ontario that send their students to the test centers.
So who's responsible for this? Who has that oversight ownership?
Well, this is an interesting dichotomy that you bring up on that, Rick, because we have two ministries involved in this. There isn't one direct ministry. The MTO sets the rules and parameters, and the actual governance and compliance is maintained by MC, the Ministry of Colleges and Universities. So they take the oversight portion, but their whole degree of oversight involves all the colleges, all the universities, plus all the private career colleges, which we fit into. And they are looking at the paperwork in almost all cases when they come to do an inspection, but they've started to do some outside inspections now on the yards, which is a degree of compliance up from what it used to be. So that's gotten a little better. But we really think it would be wise to have just the MTO involved, since they're setting the parameters. They know the ins and outs of it. They do the work on it. We're working with MTO right now to reconfigure the MELT course to try to clean up some of the gaps and spaces that have been causing problems over the last 8 years now. And that is still going to be a project in the works until 2026. And we hope that we can get some measurable improvements on that at that point. And maybe the MTO will start to take some degree of oversight in that. We would like right now to have the MTO participate in doing the inspections, where they would inspect the yard, the vehicles, the maintenance records, because all of this is important to having safe roads and having people trained properly to go out on the roads and share those roads with the rest of our families, our friends, and our community. So we need to have proper compliance and oversight coming through on that. And that's one of the big things that the stakeholder group is working on right now.
So I heard you say over 200 total schools, and I heard you say 27 trucks for one school, and I heard you say taking till 2026 to really get a grasp, a handle on where we are. What confidence level do we in the industry have that the graduates that are coming out from schools are competent right now?
Well, we're still in this gray area where there is not any clear indication of the oversight being performed to a more diligent degree, because we haven't really enacted these changes yet. We're still in sort of the semi-improved area there, where there's some work going on behind the scenes, where we're trying to get a new melt a prescription to come forward with what the course load should be and how that should be performed, including now we have to put on a lesson plan for what's happening on the road and your road courses that you're taking them on and the challenges thereupon. And that is an improvement. So our school's ready to go with that October 1st. And due to some pressure in the industry, that was delayed until next July. So there was a 9-month reprieve for any schools. We were all set to go. All of our schools had everything lined up to go to enter into Paris, which is the internal workings at MCU to make sure that we are in compliance with what we're supposed to be teaching. So we are a little bit set back by that because we are all ready to go with it. And based on what's happening in the industry and concerns and complaints about it, plus the fact that the MELT program is being revisited right now, they decided to change that and delay it until July 1st of 2026.
I was going to say,
John, I'll pass to you.
Yeah, I was going to say, the problem that I see there is wasn't there already a curriculum in place, with all schools to say, well, to tweak it from July to October was like, yeah, it's no big deal. A little more documentation to kind of confirm what we're doing. And now this other group that we know of that's put pressure on to say, oh, no, we need more time. I'm like, if you were operating properly to begin with, you would have had all your ducks in a row anyway. It wouldn't matter. So.
Yeah. And I think one of the things to take into consideration here, being on the school side of things, is some of the schools are being operated pretty close to the line with the actual owner of the school, who may be participating as the manager or potentially even as an instructor, which I know is a fairly common thing with the smaller schools. So you may have somebody that's fighting to keep their school alive right now, because this is a very trying time now.
Sure,
things have slowed down considerably.
Yeah.
And they'll be out in the truck for maybe 8 to 10 hours a day, and then they have to do the administration on it. And so some of the smaller schools would be one of the ones that would be crying out the most on this. We don't have that kind of problem with our schools because we're set up in a normal way where most of our schools are very long-standing and have an awful lot of background and ability, and they've been able to work out the management structure and the administration to a more feasible degree, even in a slowdown like we're experiencing now.
Right.
So if I can ask, because we're I think we could talk about this honestly for hours. There's so many avenues we can go by, and my head is just zinging, but I'm trying to stay focused on my audience. And one of the things we repeatedly hear is the cost of getting your MELT. So I got my license a really long time ago. Most of our audience wasn't even an inkling in their parents' mind yet. And I got it at Fanshawe College. It was done through the Ontario Safety League, and I paid $4,500 back then. Realistically now, just based on, MELT, if we've got an applicant who's looking at all these schools out there and they're shopping on price, and we live in a world of take the cheapest price that you can, but what's a realistic expectation for a driver to pay and get MELT, the minimum MELT, do you think, based on overhead structures and maintaining a truck and all of those things? So what should an applicant be considering?
Well, I think anybody that looks at trying to do a MELT course at $3,500 to even $4,000 is fooling themselves that they're going to be trained properly and get the amount of training that they should be based on what the criteria is. We did a scan of our schools and asked for them to give us feedback on how much it cost them to run an hour out on the road for training. And the cost ran anywhere from $108 to $127 per hour out on the road, based on where you're located, what you're paying your instructors, and the type of power unit you have. If you look at MELT, 32 hours on the road, $3,500 is not even covering that. So it's covering none of the rest of it either. So if you're thinking 3,500 is going to get you a proper course, there's no way in the world that that's achievable in this day and age with the costs the way they are. And to put a real low cost on doing a proper course, I think you're looking at anywhere from 6,000 up. And I know our proper courses are somewhere around 10,000 for the 200-hour course. And that gives you a much better ease into the industry. If you had that, that was the type of course I did when I became licensed. I did a full course, and it's much easier to get a job then. It's much sounder practice to go out on the road when you have that many basic skills covered. And we're not just talking about being able to steer and shift, but we're also talking about the knowledge of how to actually run a proper truck, to be compliant, be confident out on the road, make deliveries on time, to do your pickups on time, and to deal with the customers the way they want to, because every driver is the face of that company when they're dealing with the customers.
That's right. It's a customer service industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, from an insurance perspective, it's been known by many insurers that the TTSAO 200-hour program is very accepted by the insurance industry. So as a new driver coming in, if you can demonstrate that you completed the 200-hour course through a TTSAO school, it makes it much easier for you to get that job with that motor carrier, or allowing that motor carrier to accept you as a new entrant into a training program of that organization.
Yeah, John, that is exactly right. And when I came out, we were given a 2-year background of being acceptable to insurance carriers. And there were a few insurance carriers around there that were abiding by that 2-year. And even to this date, there's the odd one that might be giving you credit for 1 year of experience right now.
Yep.
As long as you have that 200-hour course. And that does help immeasurably when you're looking at maintaining somebody's pricing for their insurance program.
So from a safety manager perspective, when I put my safety manager hat, thinking back to my days, what I've heard today is, if I've got a driver who's been licensed for essentially 5 years or less, if they were not trained at a TTSAO school, I have an obligation to determine whether or not that driver actually met the criteria, particularly if I'm thinking about putting him in the US. Because if he's involved in any sort of collision in the US and it goes to a lawyer, this is all over the news. The lawyer is going to go dig in and say, where did you get your license? Oh, Mr. Employer, let's all take it down the nuclear path. Okay, everyone. So we're going to take a break right there. And that's the end of our first part of the interview with Phillip Fletcher and TTSAO and the Meltdown. Please join us next time. John's going to pick up the conversation where we talk about the issue of these fraudulent licenses from the perspective of the insurer. And we're going to get a little bit deeper into how many drivers are actually impacted and what this means to the carriers. Hey, thanks for tuning in. We hope you found today's materials to be useful and you can put them to work. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. And if you've got questions from today's material, or maybe you're just looking to improve your safety and compliance game, please feel free to reach out to either me or John. And remember, you can't manage what you don't monitor. The key to compliant profitability is just one phone call away. So until next time, put the phone down while you drive and keep your eyes on the prize.